essentially why I say the biggest thing for new traders is they need to have a strong enough why. And not everybody will have the motivation from, not everybody's in a bad situation. Some
Yeah.
people, they're comfortable, and that doesn't actually work to their advantage. Funnily enough, if you're in a good situation, why are you going to try to make your life better?
So, welcome, Ethan. Today we have another episode of the Life Is Bullish podcast. I'm so glad to actually have you here. We've been talking for a while. We have today Ethan from Garland, trader. You can find him on YouTube, on Instagram, and many other platforms. I've seen actually some of your content. It's been amazing. I actually seen some of the YouTube videos. How long have you been actually posting these videos, and how long have you been trading?
So yeah, I've been trading for about 4 years now. I don't really, in terms of being public, I haven't been public in terms of the content that I've been posting for very long. I literally started YouTube about 4 months ago. So it's
Really?
actually kind of wild how things have exploded on YouTube. In terms of me trading, though, I mean, it's been over 4 years now. And so I wanted to keep my journey as private as possible, but then
Mhm.
eventually I broke into, you know, I started helping more people, and eventually I started, posting the stuff that helped me and helped others that I've helped, and it just sort of snowballed from there. But social media wise, I've literally been doing it for the last 4 months on YouTube, and that's when everything started to take off pretty much straight away. And that's why I decided to take it further. I really wasn't doing it to, pursue a big deal in creating
Mhm.
content for, around trading. It just sort of had a snowball effect, and I just decided to roll with it.
Nice. So would you say that actually, in trading, you need to always refine and you need to always try to get better in order to improve as a trader and actually be profitable, increase your profitability, increase your accuracy? Would you say that you've seen some similarities in your YouTube growth with all the refining that you needed to do and all of these things in order to grow more?
Oh, 100%. In terms of creating content and stuff on YouTube, it's really is a process of refining, and there's a lot of similarities that you can draw between creating content and trading. Again, I think I watched a podcast as well with Scott Taylor as well that you
Mhm.
had recently, and he was also saying that it's like a business. Trading is a business, and content creation is a business at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of similarities that you can draw between content creation, businesses, and trading, because at the end of the day, I've always seen trading as a business, regardless. And I think that's also what changes the game for a lot of people, is when they start to see trading as a business rather than just a way to make a quick buck, which, as we know, is going to completely empty your bank account if you approach
Yeah.
trading that way. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of similarities in terms of when I started trading and when I started creating content. Both very rough, bumpy starts. I mean, when I started creating content, everything was super, super rough. I was literally just posting my thoughts and my concepts around trading, and it was literally just a screen recording. I think the first recording that I released was literally just a screen recording. The audio was only working on one side of your
Really?
headphones, and everything was super blurry. And I had a ton of people commenting on it. Oh, we can't hear you, can't see you. But that video ended up doing 100, and I think it's like just about to tick over to 150,000 views. And
Really?
so that kind of, yeah, it's
What
literally,
did you
I'm not
share on
showing my
that video,
face.
man?
Yeah, so that video is literally just me talking. The sound barely works. The audio is like messed up. The video is super like blurry, but it's
Mhm.
got 149,000 views. So it just sort of took off. And when I saw that, I'm like, this is the worst possible quality of video that you could release. And it
Mhm.
did so well. So imagine if I stepped it up a little,
Yeah.
and I just continue to step it up to where I am now. And I'm just really, I think, with content creation, to some degree, you have to either be really dedicated or really lucky, one of the two, or be dedicated enough to continue doing it until you get your break.
Yeah.
or you need to have a break earlier on, which spurs you on. And in my case, I believe I had a break earlier on to some degree, because literally I've been doing it for 4 months and I'm now almost at 20,000 subscribers, which is crazy as well.
Crazy.
And I was literally just wanting to have 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, maybe. And so for me to have already, I think I'm nearing on 19,000 now. It's absolutely wild. In the first, I think it was the first 2 weeks, I had 1,000 followers, and I was like, I just wanted this by the end of the year. So yeah, it's crazy. And the journey wasn't the same for my trading though.
Okay.
It was definitely a thing of I had to hang on for dear life until I had my break. And so that's essentially what happened with trading versus my YouTube. It was very different journeys for sure, but there are a lot of similarities that you can draw in general in terms
Mm.
of, refining your trading style and the way you create content as well.
Well, first of all, congratulations for the growth that you've seen on your channels. For sure, it takes a lot of dedication and refinement, and also people must
Thanks,
like
man.
what you're sharing. Um, Connecting to this, I would like to ask you if you have any advice, since we were talking both about trading and content creation, if you have any advice for new traders in general, and then also an advice for traders that maybe want to start creating content, but they're either too shy or they don't know where to start from.
Well, yeah. So in terms of new traders, the advice that I would give you is, firstly, don't start if you are, you first have to figure out what your why is and why
Mm.
you're doing this. And if your why is to, well, I just want to make some extra money and like maybe quit my job, then don't bother, because that's not a strong enough why. Everybody wants that.
Mm.
And if everybody could be a profitable trader, as we know, nobody would make money because in order for you to make money, somebody else has to lose money.
Right.
And that's the other key thing that I learned, is that, it's a bit of a dog eat dog business. You need to know that in order for you to make money, somebody else needs to lose money, and that's just how it is. Unfortunately, it's the transaction of, people that are smarter than you taking money from people that aren't as smart as you. Unfortunately, and it takes a while to become smart in some cases, and so, especially in my case, and so you really have to have a strong enough why to be doing what you're doing. Secondly, you need to develop a love for sitting on charts and collecting data. Otherwise, there's no point, because that is what you're going to be doing 90% of the time. The actual trading for me is now just a side byproduct of that. For the
Yeah.
first, 3 or 4 years, you've got to be willing to just sit and collect data, take the knocks, refine your strategy, continue to backtest, and but also literally hammer it down. It's like you're creating some kind of like sculpture. You've got like literally you've got a big giant rock that you're trying to cut down into a shape, and that's all you're doing. You're hammering down and refining that. But the mistake that a lot of people make is that they get tired of hammering on the same rock and they jump onto another rock and start hammering
Right.
on another rock and then another rock. And by the end of it, all the rocks look like nothing, because you haven't
Absolutely.
stayed and refined one thing. And that's also probably the biggest challenge that most new people have. And it was certainly my challenge. And to some degree, it's also a challenge that I face constantly, because there's so many different ways to be profitable. And there's so many different avenues to trading, with whether it be trading crypto, trading forex, trading stocks, trading indices, different ways to approach the market, that I could approach all of those different avenues and find profitability. But is it really worth switching things up that often? No. If you've got something that works, keep it. If it's boring and you're getting bored and you want to hop onto something new just because it's the new thing, I don't recommend you do it. I mean, there was a time when it was smart money. Smart money was the new thing, and everybody wanted to trade smart money concepts. Now it's ICT, which is essentially still smart money concepts. It's the
Yeah.
same thing, in my opinion. It's just different terminology. It's all just based off of liquidity, and everybody just wants to put into a box like a new category. I mean, I used to be in the music industry, and so I used to produce music, and I draw a lot of similarities behind it because there's different genres of music that are popular at different times, and people would produce different music that would be popular, and you can chase the new thing, but you'll never get good at making one thing that's yours. And it's the same with trading. If you don't focus on one strategy that works, you're not going to be able to turn that sculpture you're sculpting into
Yes.
something that's good. And it took me a while to do that. And again, it also just all boils down to discipline. And that's the thing. I wasn't a very disciplined person, and it's something that I work on every single day. You just have to do stuff that you don't want to do, and that's all that breaks down to. And you literally have to. Yes, maybe I'm bored of the strategy that I'm trading right now, but it's profitable, and you just have to stick with it. And that's just what it is. And you got to do stuff you don't want to do in order to benefit from what you're doing. Otherwise, there's no point. There really is no
Yeah.
point. And that's the thing. That's another thing that I realized very quickly from when I started trading was that I'm actually the worst person to ever become a trader. And what I mean by that is like literally all of my personality traits were the worst personality traits to have when you want to become a trader.
Why would you say
And
this?
because when I started out, I literally have, for example, I'm like the most anxious person in the world.
Mhm.
So what that means is that literally my emotions were fully taking over what I do. So in order to make decisions, you need to be the opposite of that. You need
Yeah.
to be completely rational, not allow your emotions and anxieties, which anxiety, as I'm sure a lot of you know, is like literally the fear of what's going to happen in the future. And
Yeah.
so when you're trading and you've got anxiety, it's because you're worried about what the outcome of the trade is going to be. And as we know, when you're trying to trade, you do not want to have an outcome based mentality. You want to be trading with this focus being the process. So you want to focus on the process of trading and not on the outcome, i.e., what am I going to make out of this trade, this one trade? No, you need to think of the whole process of trading as I'm going to take 100 trades, and at the end of it, I'm going to make some money.
Yes.
But this one trade that I'm taking, I'm just focusing on the process. I'm not focusing on what the outcome of that one trade is going to be. But for me, obviously, as a more anxious kind of person, I was focused on the outcome of every single trade. And it took me a really long time to hammer that out of my system. And I mean, I still struggle with it to this day, but I believe that I've been able to conquer that anxiety and the fear of the outcome of each trade. And I'm able to focus more on individual, not on individual trades, but on the overall process of
Yes.
trading. And yeah, so
Did
essentially,
you?
like I say, that's just one of the traits that I had that made me literally the worst candidate to become a successful trader. But then there are certain other traits that can overpower these things. And so the one thing that really overpowered that for me was just like I said, when you're starting out, you need to have a strong why. And my why was very strong. I come from a family that's, I'd say below middle class, and we didn't have a lot of money growing up. And so for me, a lot of the conflict within my family would always stem from money. And so for me, I always wanted to be financially stable and free. And that was
Mhm.
my biggest goal. And a lot of people will say, hey, you're being, what's the word? You're being, when you like things, forget the word now. Maybe edit this out. Um, um,
I got it.
um,
Wait.
I'm trying to think. When you
Materialistic.
like things, yes, you're being materialistic. So a lot of people would say you're being materialistic, but that's not true because it boils down to a lot more than that because like I say, it's a psychological thing of I want to have a peaceful life. I want to have
Yeah.
a life that I don't worry about those kinds of things. And obviously it's a deeply driven psychological thing for me that if you've got money and you've got your financial things in order, you're not going to struggle with that kind of worry and that kind of unpeacefulness in your life. And so for me, that was one of my biggest drivers. And also, obviously, I mean, when you're working a really rubbish job in a mall somewhere, selling cell phones to old ladies and being sworn at on a daily basis in
Yeah.
like a customer service type of job, that's also a pretty good motivation. So I always say that you've got to have a strong why, but you've also got to have a really good thing that you're running away from and something that you're running towards. And for me, it
Nice.
was always that I'm running away from, my fears of having an unpeaceful life because I haven't conquered my financial life and I want to be financially free. I'm also running away from being stuck in a situation that's not great. Working in retail is terrible, especially in South Africa. It's really bad. I mean, the what they pay in South Africa versus the rest of the world is like a joke, especially when you're working in a retail kind of environment, or if you're working in any kind of close to minimum wage kind of job. Literally, all other minimum wage jobs in the world actually look great compared to what we have here, and it's
Really.
actually crazy. Um, but obviously, living conditions here it's a lot cheaper to live here. Living costs are way cheaper. So when you do start to earn dollars and those kinds of things, it is pretty beneficial. But that being said, you, I digress. But basically, what I'm saying is, you're trying to run away from a really bad situation, but you've also got a really strong why, like I
Yeah.
said. So you're running towards something, and you're being motivated by things that are chasing you. So for me, it was so strong that I had no doubt in my mind that I had to literally be successful. Otherwise, I wouldn't stop until I was successful. And so for me, over the course of 4 years, I just continued to fail until I stopped failing. And that's essentially why I say the biggest thing for new traders is they need to have a strong enough why. And not everybody will have the motivation from, not everybody's in a bad situation. Some
Yeah.
people, they're comfortable, and that doesn't actually work to their advantage. Funnily enough, if you're in a good situation, why are you going to try to make your life better? It's the same reason why we look at, like, child stars and that becoming really, messed up. For example, like, um, I'm trying to think of her name, but Amanda Bynes and all of them, like, literally ending up all fucked up is because
Yeah.
they literally grew up with such a great, like, life that they had to, their brain just couldn't handle it. Like, they literally had enough money, they were famous, and I think psychologically it messed them up because you have to, what do you do with your life then? You've literally started at the top. So I think for a lot of people, starting at the bottom is the best place to start. And I feel really blessed that I started in a more, in a situation that was more difficult because it shaped me into the person that I am today. And I'm not by no means saying that I'm, uh, you know, where I want to be, even close. But I believe that I'm starting to, like, taste taste the beginnings of, what I've envisioned, and it's a really amazing feeling.
That's great, man. Those are great messages also for the audience that maybe are in a similar, not necessarily the same, but in a similar situation, and they want to achieve something, either running away from something while having bigger goals. And it's good to have an example of someone that did it and that actually knows how it feels and can give us some advices. So you were talking
Yeah.
about South Africa, and I wanted to ask if there is any trading culture down in South Africa and how is the trading space over there?
Yeah, so that's it's a touchy subject because the trading culture in South Africa in general is a little bit toxic, to be very honest with you.
Okay.
It's similar to kind of like the trading culture, let's say, in Nigeria, or even to some example, maybe I'm a little bit out of line, but Philippines and those kinds of places. There's a lot of fake gurus, and there's a lot of, to be honest, there's a lot of dodginess happening in general. So, in terms of South Africa, there's a really bad, and in general, let's be honest, in the forex trading space, there's a stigma attached to forex. There's a stigma attached to crypto. There's a stigma attached to all these different kinds of, let's say professions that, where people do really well in a maybe short space of time. For example, crypto or forex. Obviously, we know that it takes time. It takes time to get to that point of overnight success, long
Yeah.
overnight success. Um, but obviously, there will always be people that leverage that for their own financial gain. Of, hey, let's trade this demo account to a few $1 million, and maybe a few people will pay for my course,
Yeah,
or
of
maybe a
course.
few people will join my signal group that will never make money. But it's a very touchy subject because we, you know, um, I think there's a difference between, obviously, there's trading influencers, okay, firstly, who I don't believe are doing a bad job, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. They're
Hmm.
literally just, some of them aren't the best of traders, and that's fine. And they're not stepping over the line of being an influencer to being more of on the lines of a, let's say, um, less ethical, uh, let's say, trader, where they are literally, fabricating a lot of their results, etc.,
Yeah.
etc., um, in order to basically defraud people out of their money.
Yeah.
So there's a difference. I think there's a line that needs to be drawn. And I think for me, that line gets drawn when you look at people that are, selling courses, etc., 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 and they're doing like one-to-one mentorships. And, you know, I feel like for me, um, the line gets drawn where people that are supposed to be great traders are putting more time into their community and their education, where they're literally spending, hours with people teaching them how to trade. And all I'm thinking is, you're taking on one student and you're teaching them how to trade for what, a couple $100,
Yeah.
but yet you just made like $10,000 the other day. What are you doing, wasting your time? And to some degree, and that's the thing, there's a fine line, because um, I believe that there are legit traders that have signals. There are legit traders that have of analysis. Um, but there's a fine line, and I think that the fine line and the clue is when you see traders like being desperate. Firstly, you can tell when an influencer is desperate for money from people rather than creating the wealth themselves. So, like for example, if all of my social media platforms disappeared tomorrow, I'd be good.
Hmm.
I would be able to restart them. It would take time, but I still have the knowledge, and I
Yeah,
still
right.
have my trading strategies, and I make money regardless. I mean, a year before I started trading, I had already become more than profitable enough to just live. I wasn't putting anything of what I was doing out there online. And yeah, I mean, like I say, it was almost a mistake that I started, doing what I do online. And so, yeah, I think also people need to realize that traders that have communities and have, for example, signal groups, analysis groups, doesn't people don't connect the dots properly, because they're like, oh, why are you selling courses and signals if you make so much money trading? And I'm like, but why not?
Right.
Because it doesn't take me any extra time. I'm literally just clicking a few extra buttons and copying and pasting what I'm doing, and it's not taking up any extra of my time. I could have 1,000 people following me and it won't make a difference to me. It doesn't
Hmm.
take any extra of my time. If I, however, was literally taking like 10 to 20 people a day and trying to teach them individually and only charging a couple of $100, then I would say, hey, why are you doing that? Because you're making so much more money and your time is being wasted. It doesn't
Correct.
make
Yeah.
sense. But yeah, I think people, when it comes to this space, immediately dismiss everything that people do, especially when it comes to education, they're very quick to dismiss, and that's granted a very valid way to think to some degree, because there's so much crap out there, let's be
Of
honest.
course, of course.
And there's so many things that you know that's not worth it. And
100%.
let's be honest, that's just how the industry is. And we've all been there on the way we start, and we start and we join all of the crap educational services, and that's how we learn what's crap and what's not crap. It's
Mhm.
just part of the journey. I've joined so many different mentorships and so many different signal groups and so many different analysis groups. I learned a little from each, but you can eventually start to tell, this is going to give me value, and you start to learn what you're looking for to learn from. And eventually you gain a bunch of information, and you're able to put that together and create something for yourself,
Yeah, 100%.
so yeah. uh,
I
in general, South Africa is it's questionable.
I
I wouldn't jump to learn from South African people too quickly,
understand.
except for me.
Nice. Um, talking about this, talking about influencers, courses, and so on. What I believe personally is 100% what you said. At the same time, I believe that, of course, there needs to be a distinction between, the people that don't really trade and just try to teach, and the people that actually do trade and maybe have a course, have a mentorship, have a channel. Now, at the same time, I believe 100% with all my heart that in order to be profitable, it's just based on you. You have within yourself everything that you need in order to be profitable. At the same time, you need to get the informations from somewhere. So I believe that getting the courses, getting the informations from different good mentors is good. And then you need to find your own strategy, your own way of trading, or take all of the good things from different courses, different sources, and find your way of trading and your system and your repeatable strategy. This is what I usually stand for. But at the same time, I believe that, without people teaching, whether it is for free on YouTube or actually paid courses, if you find the correct mentors, it is 100% necessary in order to actually proceed faster. Because for me, it would be hard to actually imagine starting from zero again and having no guidance at all, just opening a chart, looking at the candles, and thinking, okay, I'll have to figure this out. It's, of course, it will take more time, but whether it is
Yeah.
with free YouTube or paid courses, whatever, if you find the good sources of information, then you can just take different informations, find your own strategy at the end.
Yeah, it's difficult to say, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of rubbish out there, and
Right.
it's kind of like a roll of the dice. I mean, it also depends on you as a person. How naive are you? Are you going to be the one that falls for those investment scams? Are you going to be the one that jumps into those, you know, are you going to jump into, for example, signal groups where it's like literally like buy, no stop loss? I mean,
Yeah.
you can immediately, you can do your research and figure these things out as well. And also, some people are going to take much longer than others, and that's just because of how, I guess, it's their past experiences and the way that they've experienced the world and the way that they've been brought
Mhm.
up. Some people are just going to take longer as a trader to become a profitable trader
Yeah.
and to just get it. Like myself, for example, like I said, I was not the right person to get into trading at all. And so for me, I was always looking for a way to mitigate the anxiety that I felt when I was
Mhm.
trading, and that led to me trying to take all of these shortcuts constantly. And obviously, I discovered that that was not going to be worthwhile for me. And eventually, I figured out other ways to mitigate, the problems that I had as well. And so, yeah, I mean, it really depends. And like I said, when you're looking for a strategy and you're looking for a way to trade, I think that that is 90% of the journey, because psychologically, again, obviously we know that like psychology is one of the keys to being
Yeah.
profitable. And I think that that's the main battle that you're doing. But your psychology can be affected by your strategy massively. And that's what I learned. I put boundaries and different um, protocols into my strategy to limit my anxieties. And I had to find ways of trading that would limit my anxiety, firstly, and work with my lifestyle, secondly, and work with my job. So
Mm.
that's the main thing. You need to find something that works for your psychology, firstly, and secondly, your lifestyle, and then
Nice.
also your risk tolerance as well. So that also kind of feeds into your psychology. But some people want to hold trades for longer and make higher risk reward, but you have to be prepared for lower strike rates. You just have to.
Yeah.
Your trades aren't going to play out if there's no such strategy that is 80% win rate and 30 risk reward. It's just not going to happen. And if you're trying to look for, 10 risk reward or whatever, you got to be ready to have, 20% win rate, 30% win rate. It's just how it is. There are exceptions to this rule sometimes, but it's not going to happen like that in general ever. To be honest, I'm yet to find somebody that has performed like that as well. And the thing is, as well, and one of the biggest things that changed everything for me, to sort of shift subject to some degree, was I discovered people that were trading profitably
Mhm.
that were completely outside of the social media space.
Yeah.
So for me, I literally met people, and I think that that's why networking is very important as well within the space. Even if you're not like an influencer or on social media, it's important to network and meet people that are doing what you want to do. And I mean, a lot of people talk about it, but literally meeting people and proving and showing, I think the most important thing is showing your brain that people are doing it. Like,
Right. Yeah.
especially when it comes to trading,
Mhm.
because with trading, I feel like everybody starts to build up this brick wall in their head that says that all of the people are doing it are just a scam
Right.
because
Yeah.
there are so many of them.
Yes.
So if you're looking at like 99 out of 100 of these influencers out there, you start to realize, hey, this can't be possible. Most of them are not legitimately doing it, and so your brain starts to tell you it's not a legitimate thing. And I've met so many people that have this stigma stuck in their head. And of course, people have this stigma stuck in their head for one reason, and that's because they're trying to explain to themselves why they weren't able to conquer.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that just can't be profitable trading and they give up, and their excuse is, hey, it's not possible. There's no way. All of it is a scam. But then you conquer it and suddenly you say, hey, but I managed to be profitable and I've made money. And they're like, no, it's impossible. It's a scam. And I
Yeah.
literally had that recently. Um, Literally, one of my girlfriend's uncles, he literally will tell me straight up that everything that I do is not legit because he says that it's impossible to be profitable. And I'm like, well, I can show you the withdrawal I made last week. And
Right.
he's like, yeah, but that company just probably paid you to promote their stuff. I'm like, no, here is my statement. Here is my broker history. Here is the trade that I made. And here's the withdrawal. He's like, no, it's not possible. You're not even trading the real assets. And I'm like, yes, but that's not how it works. This is Forex and etc. Oh,
How do you deal
nice.
with people that doubt
Anyways,
it? How do you deal with family members or friends or these people that actually doubt you? And
yeah.
are you leaning more towards, explaining to them how it actually works, or you just leave it at that and move on?
Yeah, so that's one of the tricky things when it came to, when you're on your journey. Nowadays it's a lot easier because obviously you're doing well. So when you're doing well, it's
Yeah.
easy to explain to people, hey, I'm doing well, things are okay. But when you're struggling and when you're coming up, my actual strategy with, dealing with my family and friends was literally just not to tell anybody. You have
Right.
to literally guard yourself. You got to guard your psychology because if you got to be careful of who you tell things to. And it's not just you got to be careful of who you tell bad news to, and when things go bad, you've got to be careful of who you tell when things go well,
Yeah.
because
Absolutely,
you
man.
could have a breakthrough. You've got to have a break. You could have a breakthrough in your trading, and you go to tell this person. It could be your friend, it could be your girlfriend, your wife, whatever. And if they come to you with skepticism, how is that going to make you feel going
Yeah.
forward when you're trying to build on that success that you've had? You're going to think, okay, what I did, does it really matter? And if you're looking outward for validation on what you're doing, in this industry, you're not going to find that validation, unfortunately,
100%.
because in most situations you're not going to find it, because it's such a it's a market that is so manipulated and has such a bad reputation that if you try to tell somebody that you achieved something good from it, chances are they're definitely not going to believe you, and they're not going to believe that you're going to do good things with it because the track record is so low. I mean, it's like, yeah, people aren't going to have that faith in you, unfortunately.
Yes.
And if they do, great. I mean, it's very rare. And it's something that I had to come to terms with. It's very difficult to deal with, because I obviously believed in what I was going to do, and I really believed in it. And when you start to tell people this and they have negative responses to it, it does affect you, and you have to shield yourself from that. So, but I was pretty lucky in the way that I just was so like headstrong that I knew I would eventually one day be
Mhm.
successful. And I mean, that's not necessarily right now. I'm doing really well, but I'm not where I want to be. But I always knew that I would be here, and I know where I'm going to be after here. And so, people start to change their minds. It's funny when you start to see people start to change their mind
Yeah.
about you, because, it, for me, I was literally working in a cell phone store selling cell phones, and I was like, hey, in the next year and a half, I'm gonna buy my own property, and I'm going to be driving the car that I want to drive, and I'm not going to have to worry about working a job. I'm going to just work for myself. I'm going to be trading, and that's it. And
Mhm.
you tell that to somebody that you care about, and you've got to just prepare yourself to not, if you're going to tell somebody about it, you got to prepare yourself for a negative answer potentially, because of the nature of this market. And you can't feel offended by it, because if you tell them, you have to be ready for that response, unfortunately. And it's the sad part of it. It doesn't mean that they don't believe in you. It's just the nature of it. And a lot of, there will be exceptions to this, but most of the time your family and friends are just going to be like, oh, haha, cool, great. I'm
All
sure it's going
right.
to happen, and you're going to be able to see that they know that you know that they're not fully invested in it, and you're just like, okay, well, great. And eventually, you just don't tell anyone, and that's all I did. And then eventually, one day, you make your big breakthroughs, and then it's okay to tell people. But for me, that was my strategy. You just have to really guard your psychology,
Nice. Yeah, I
and
agree.
you can't be hurt. You can't be hurt when people aren't on that same wavelength as you.
Mhm.
And not everybody is wired that way. No, not everybody like has that mentality of, a lot of people, and I think it's fine. But a lot of people are just fine with their day to day life. They're happy with
Yeah.
the way that they're living, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's what makes them happy. But there's people, I feel like I'm one of the people that just want something more all the time. And
Mhm.
that's just how it always was. And it might be a curse as well, because maybe you're not always happy with where you are. And so that's a curse to some degree. But I believe that, obviously you'll end up way further if you keep pushing for more. That's just how it is. But, that's one thing that I need to learn, is to be happy with where I am as well. So that's also another, self improvement that I'm working
Yeah.
on.
It's good to have a mix of both. To be happy where you are, but to push for more. It's always
Yeah,
great
it's
motivation.
a
Yeah.
balance.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Talking about your breakthrough, and I wanted to understand which strategy you're currently using. If you're going with smart money
Hmm.
concepts, if you're going with your own style of trading, and also I would like to ask if you're trading with prop firms or personal capital at the moment.
So the way that I trade is sort of a mixture between ICT and traditional small money concepts to
Hmm.
some degree. So I use small money concepts for mapping my higher time frame structures and trading sort of like ICT styled entries within high time frame structures. So
Hmm.
I think that when it comes to ICT in general, what ICT teaches is great, but we have to understand that every strategy has its own, you know to some degrees weak spot. And I believe that the weak spot for ICT is that you can constantly be stuck on lower time frames because of the way it is. And that's, I guess, to some degree is a weak spot and its strength, because you can do a lot of analysis on the lower time frames when it comes to ICT, because you're looking at liquidity on lower time frames as well, and you can take small scalps. But if you're looking to be profitable long term, we know that you need to have a good risk reward ratio. So
100%.
if you're looking for the better risk reward ratio trades, you need to be focused on the higher time frame as well, but not just, zooming out and looking a little at the higher time frame and saying, hey, we're a little bit bullish. You need to know a little bit more in depth where price is going, where price is at currently, and what you expect price to do next. I mean, obviously, we're not trying to predict what's going to happen. We're just reacting to what's currently happening at the moment in the market. And for me, once I started with trading ICT and ICT style entries, after quite a background in smart money concepts. And the reason I liked it was because the lower time frame entries were so easy to grasp and they were so simple. And there was such a little bit of discretion involved in the entries, because there are ways that you can define the ranges that you're trading and the liquidity sweeps that you're looking for. And so once I had defined that, I was able to define an entry criteria that was very mechanical. And it worked. It really, really worked. But then I started to realize that I can't just trade, one time frame. I mean, you could. Technically, I could literally code a bot that could be profitable for, over a long period of time. But if you're looking to have lower drawdown, you're looking to have a higher strike rate, you need to know what's happening on the higher time frames. So I developed a way to to fuse the way that I used to map smart money concepts, higher time frame structure, and use that to have higher probability trades on the lower time frames. Just purely because you don't want to be entering on the lower time frames when you're in the middle of no man's land on the higher time frames, because you could be in the biggest range ever. You could have just broken structure. Why would you be looking to go long? So it's that kind of thing of, you need to know where you are on higher time frame structure as well.
Well, amazing, Ethan. It was amazing to have you here. First of all, thank you so much for coming at the Life is Bullish podcast. I feel like we've talked for only 10 minutes because we just went by so fast, but at the same time, you've shared so much value. So first of all, thank you so much for being here. It was great having you. I hope that we actually connect again, possibly the next time in person. We maybe might as well do a in-person podcast. What you say?
Yeah, I think that'll be good.
Great.
I really like this. So yeah, why not?
Great, man. So thank you so much for being here, and we stay in touch. Please, to the audience, comment what you liked. Comment if you want to see one podcast in person. And thank you so much, Ethan, for being here and connecting.
Cool. Thank you very much for having me, man.
My name is Edward Excel, and this is the Life is Bullish podcast, sponsored by GoatFunder Trader.